Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome to the first, in my words, the first community engagement spotlight or community partner spotlight. My name is Natural Love, and I work as the Assistant Director for Community Engagement with the Office for Community and Civic Engagement at UNCP. Today, I'm via WebEx with Ms. Asa Rebels for the Community Partner Spotlight. So the initiative behind this, or the idea behind the spotlight, we partnered with UNCP's Career Center to spotlight various community partners and the work they do within their nonprofit organizations. So during today's conversation, be prepared to hear from Ms. Asa Rebels about the work she does within two local nonprofits. She will share insight about how she got involved in nonprofit work, as well as meaningful information about her organization and how we as a community can all support. Good morning, Asa. How are you?
Good morning. I'm great.
That's so great. That's so great. I guess for starters, Asa, would you like to introduce yourself and share a little bit about you?
Sure. Well, I am originally from North Carolina. I am Lumbee. However, I moved away at a young age to South Dakota, which is where I primarily grew up. I've been kind of a gypsy most of my life, moving around all over the U.S. My academic background is I got my bachelor's in criminology from NC State. I did my master's at Emory University in Atlanta in public health. That was in health management, health policy and management. And then I recently finished my PhD back in 2018 in also in public health at the University of South Carolina in health promotion, education, and behavior. And so a lot of my background really centers on health behavior or just human behavior generally, as far as
Awesome.
academics. Mhm.
That sounds like you have a lot of experience, like within the healthcare background and
Yeah.
healthcare field.
Not necessarily healthcare, but working with individuals in their health behavior. So things like smoking prevention, diet, etc. Understanding why people participate and commit crimes or violent acts. A lot of my research focus on violence and substance use. So I kind of have experience in a variety of different areas, and my jobs, reflect that as well. I've worked in all kinds of different agencies and had lots of different experiences, from working in a gas station and laying tile to an engineering company, to everything you could possibly imagine. I've pretty much done.
Oh, wow, that's great. And like I said again, thank you for joining us this morning and just going through this conversation with me.
Okay.
So, Lisa, can you share with us just a brief overview of your organizations within IS? Because I know you oversee or you manage or you work with more than one.
Yes. So I locally, the first organization I work with is called Stop the Pain, and it's a church-based ministry. And I sort of randomly got involved with that through my dissertation work. So I did my dissertation in the Lumbee tribe on drug-related violence specifically. And through that, I was able to meet a local individual who had started this ministry based off his previous experiences in the community, and he also was a member of the recovery community. And he really pulled me in because of my grant writing skills, which is something I've developed over time. And I kind of helped them write a grant. We were able to get the funding. Unfortunately, shortly after I met him, he passed away in an accident, and so I felt inclined to continue to work with the agency. And through that, I was able to meet other individuals in the community who are also passionate about substance use and what's going on in our county. And I've just sort of developed a relationship with these individuals, and we've just continued to work together over the last few years. We're all passionate, we all care about the issue, and it's more of a personal commitment, much more than professional. So we're all volunteers, and we've just been working in the community. We're all fed up with what's going on, and we've all been impacted by it, and we're just trying to do our best to shed light, and not only that, but help individuals in the community as best we can. Um, the other agency also I was randomly pulled into, which seems to be, a lot of my history. Um, an individual I've known most of my life since childhood, knew I was in the community, knew I was looking for work, and they connected me with PAWSS, which is a brand new nonprofit that just started. It's been formally established since 2016, but the founder really wanted to take it in a more formal direction. He was primarily just contributing money to different agencies in the county, but he really wanted to take it to the next level and start offering services and programs. And so they brought me on to really help start that up. And through my experience with Stop the Pain, I had gotten a lot of nonprofit experience as far as starting things like developing missions and bylaws and all that. And I also took a course at RCC, how to start a nonprofit. And so that was really helpful. And I've just been sort of helping them for the last year get everything started.
Absolutely. I know I've gotten a chance to visit with you, and I want to say, was it Stop the Pain that day that I had went to visit with you all at your organization, just during one of your meetings?
That was actually PAWSS, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
yes. Mm-hmm.
And I just enjoyed the conversation. I guess just being around the table with a lot of other partners and community members and just kind of talking about the issues that impact our community. And then thinking about, like, as an institution or as an office, like, how can we help? What can we do? So I look forward to both of the partnerships. And then just like I said, just seeing what more that we can do just to support you all. And I know that's one of the questions that I'll ask you a little later. But what what has been the story of your career? I know you shed some light into your educational background, but what is the story of your career? How has the work you've done prior influenced the work that you do now?
Okay, so I would say that probably one of the main reasons why I got involved in where I'm at now is my grant writing experience. Nonprofits, one of their biggest challenges is securing funding to do these programs. And one of the first jobs I had, I did an internship in Washington, D.C. It's called Washington Interns for Native Students WINS. And I was working in the Bureau of Justice Services through the BIA, Bureau of Indian Affairs. And it was only a 2-month internship, but through the connections I made out there, I was able to get a part-time position with a nonprofit called the National Native American Law Enforcement Association. And I worked with them for several years. And that's really where I first got involved with nonprofits and started learning how to do grants. And so I was able to help them write a few grants. And from that point on, I took several courses on grant writing. And I know a big part of my PhD program, I took several classes on writing research grants. And so I have a lot of experience grant writing. And that's really what I think has really put me into this nonprofit sphere initially, and has also led me to learn and develop my skills even more as far as managing nonprofits, um, making sure all of the tax information is correct, learning how to write all these missions and bylaws. And so I have a lot of experience setting them up. And now in the last couple of years, I've learned more about managing and running them. I know you came to one of our board meetings, and so um, it's definitely an interesting experience sitting in on a board meeting. You have a lot of different personalities at play. They're all community members. And so that's how I really got involved in the nonprofit game. But I've also, like I said earlier, had a lot of other different positions. I've done research studies, which, most research is funded by grants. And so there's a lot of grant management that ties into that. What else have I done? I've worked for an engineering company where I was sort of a grants manager for them. So from an engineering perspective, we were looking more at brick and mortar grants. So I wrote grants. I wrote a grant on helping a neighborhood get sidewalks installed in the community so they could walk and be more safe. Helping get grants to restore historic buildings. Getting grants from FEMA to upgrade buildings for natural disasters. So there's all types of different grants, and I really think that's really what's driven my experience in the nonprofits is this being able to write grants and secure funding. And it's a great skill to have. You can never go wrong investing time and learning how to grant write, because it's something that I think regardless of what agency you work with, it's going to come up at some point. And there's tons of free classes. I know the course I took at RCC was free as far as the nonprofit, starting a nonprofit, and they did cover funding in that as well. But it's just something that it's just a valuable skill that you know, it's not going to lead you in the wrong direction regardless of your career choice.
Absolutely. I know I too, the grant writing course that was offered at RCC, I think the biggest thing that stood out to me was that it was free. And I definitely took advantage of that as well. If I'm not mistaken, it was a full day, like a Saturday. I went from like 8 maybe to like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Same, okay, yeah. And it was, I mean, just learning the information. And like you said, I think that's a skill that's adaptable. I know there's been some conversation within student affairs. The hope is to offer some sort of training on grant writing because it's an essential skill, vital skill that I do think that anyone can use.
Yes, it's very important. Yes, you cannot go wrong.
Exactly, yes. So Asa, can you tell us when did you decide that nonprofit work was for you, or how did you get involved in nonprofit work?
You know, I don't think I ever made the decision that it was for me. I even still struggle today working in a nonprofit because it's not, I would say it's much different than working in a traditional career choice like at a university or a company. Um, I think there's a lot more challenges working in the nonprofit sector from my experience, as particularly around funding and making sure that you're able to ensure the organization is sustainable is a huge challenge. And also, you know, working with a board, all nonprofits are managed by a board, and usually the board members all come from different backgrounds or different educational levels, they have different experiences. And so managing all the personalities that go along with that can be challenging. But I would say probably the most rewarding part of working in a nonprofit, which is why I'm still doing it, is that you really have the opportunity to work directly with the community. You get to engage with community members and you can see the impact you're making on individuals' lives yourself. And it's not like you're sitting in an office somewhere and you know you don't see the work that you're doing. And I think that's the most rewarding thing and what has really, despite the challenges, has really pushed me to continue to work in the nonprofit field. And I probably will always, you know, stay engaged in some capacity because of that. Because I'm very passionate about working with the community. I like to be able to see that what I'm doing is making an impact on individuals' lives. For me, that's the most important. I think with my research. So I do a lot of, my main position is on a research study at UNCP actually. And in the past, and not necessarily with this position, but in the past, you don't really get to see with research, you collect a lot of data and you write it up and publish it in a manuscript. And the community really never has access to that information for the most part. And I think I find that as a frustrating component of doing something like that. But you know, balancing it out with this nonprofit work helps sort of, you know, make it a little more enjoyable. And you can take the knowledge that you gain from these research experiences and share it into the nonprofit, which I think is an area that I'm very passionate about, research translation. So taking research and actually translating it to the community for use. I think that's one of the areas I'm really interested in. And, you know, again, how did I get involved? It was all just random. I can't, people just heard about me. They knew what my experiences are and they asked me to help. And I have a hard time saying no a lot of times. And so I just get pulled into these different scenarios and somehow end up just developing relationships and staying in some capacity at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, especially with the last statement. Oftentimes, having the hardest time to say no. And I find that when I do find myself doing whatever it is that I agree to or was well and told to do, that I then think, okay, why did I get myself into this? But then I think too on the other end, just kind of finding meaning in whatever opportunity was presented. But that's something I'm also trying to work on. So
everything happens for a reason, and I think that looking back on all my experiences, sometimes they were challenging, but I've always gained something positive, or learned something in some way, and it was meant to be.
Absolutely. Now, Asa, I know you shed light again on just grant writing, how that really has been an essential skill for you. But what qualities would you say are most important in doing this type of work, this type of nonprofit
I would definitely say, for me, the biggest skill and also challenge would be communication, which I think goes across the board for, everyone. But as I said earlier, working in the nonprofit field, you are working with all types of different personalities from different backgrounds, different education levels, and being able to work with and manage that can be a big challenge, but also, a benefit because you get to see different perspectives. And I know with Stop the Pain, we have a professional counselor on our staff. We have an individual or on our board, an individual who worked in a prison system. We have members of the recovery community. And so just being able to work with and manage all of that, and know where people are coming from when they're speaking, and their backgrounds, and try not to get frustrated because everything's not going to go when you're working on a team like that. Nothing's going to go the way that you plan it or envision it, and being flexible, I would say, is another big skill. Being flexible and open to what the team decides, and it's not an individual choice by any means. Yes, I may have the title of director, but I don't really see myself as a director so much as facilitating what the group wants, or coordinating. And that's how I see my role is I just listen to what they envision and try to make it happen. I'm not directing anything. I'm just facilitating a process in my mind.
Absolutely. I think that's important too. I find that volunteers, in a sense, like they can appreciate that, or anyone who's working with someone else, like just appreciating that, there's that director, but they're not the one who sees themselves as such. Um, I really appreciate that. Just about you, just the conversations that we've had, and just talking about like the volunteers and like what your hope is for partnership with us, and just knowing within myself that you seem like the type of director or the type of leader who's very adaptable, very flexible, and they're really open to volunteers or someone else's perspective, and not just saying, this is how it's going to be. Like, no, you seem as you're very open to saying, okay, well, let's consider this, or let's try it, or let's do this. Very open-minded to a lot of other things that others would like to address.
Yeah, you really have to be, especially in the nonprofit, because, volunteers really are one of the major supporters of the work you do. And, especially with the recovery community, unless you've been there, you really don't understand what they went through, and you're not going to be able to understand. And so it's critical to have their perspective, and and if you don't take it into account, then you're going to be making decisions and developing programs that are not going to help anybody. So you really have to be flexible and open. And which is hard for me because I'm very much a controlling person. So it's been a lesson for me as well to just let go.
Just let go. Yes, just let go.
Yes.
I know you brought up a really good point, just kind of your response on the last question, and I'm going to just kind of chime in from that one. But as we think about just Robinson County as a whole, as I think about UNCP as a whole, and I'm sure for you as well, the main word that comes to my mind is a sense of community, or just community. So I find that in some capacity, we're both doing work just to better our community, or to support our community, uplift, really, especially in the times that we're in. So Asa, can you speak on a little bit about how does your organization or organizations, how do you all support or collaborate with other nonprofits who may have similar missions or who might do similar work as you all?
Um, so PAWSS is brand new. So we really haven't had the opportunity to do much community partnerships yet. I know that's one of our goals. So we're moving in that direction. But with Stop the Pain, we're sort of in a different position. We, are all members of the community, and we don't have a lot of resources. And so really calling on local partners has been one of the key ways we've been able to do a lot of the stuff that we've done. I know we've gotten local businesses to donate money or resources, like the Stevens Original Bakery in Pembroke. I don't know if I'm saying their name right, but they have for several years in a row donated like hundreds of cakes to events that we've had to feed people, and people are always excited. And we always have so much cakes left over. People get to take a whole cake home with them, or a pie, or whatever they give us. And it's just like small things like that that add to our event, and it really draws people out and increases participation. So really being able to capitalize on the resources that other community partners have, so we can reach more individuals, attract more individuals, just have a larger impact with the efforts that we're doing. So we've worked with the university, we've worked with the tribe, we've worked with a lot of other nonprofits like the Southeastern Family Violence Center, um, the hospital, Southeastern. We're on several of their boards. So we try to be involved and engage as much as possible with as many partners as we can, because, we understand that we're not going to change this system by ourselves. It doesn't matter what we do as an individual agency. We know that we're going to have to all work together. But on that same note, I would say that's been one of our biggest challenges, is securing these partnerships, and really this idea of working collaboratively together. A lot of people want to stay in their own lanes, or they have their own agenda, and it's really extremely difficult to overcome that, or it has been in my experience. And this idea of true collaboration doesn't really exist, I think, even in the county yet. I mean, I think we're headed in that direction and we're doing better, but even a lot of our coalitions, which are developed around the idea of working together and collaborating, they're really more functioning as a place of an information exchange, where we go and we talk about what we're each doing individually, but there's no team project or team effort that we're all actually working on to make a difference. And it's very frustrating. And I'm hoping that eventually we'll move to a place where we can move past that. And I think even our funding structures, like grants, are moving in that direction, where they're requiring you to have partnerships. And one person can't get the money and spend it all. You actually have to be collaboratively working together. And someone's told me in the past that you have a true collaboration when you look at the budget, and not just one person's controlling the budget, that multiple agencies have access to the money and are able to utilize it. But I think partnerships is the greatest asset and also the greatest weakness in our community. So I'm hoping that, and I have seen in the last 5 years, it is changing a lot. Um, and there's institutions in the community as well who have the ability to make a huge impact, but they're not really involved at all, which I think is unfortunate. But I'm hopeful that this will begin to change, particularly with things that we're dealing with now, as far as the COVID-19, and it's really going to change how we work together. And I'm hopeful that it will bring us closer together.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I know, Asa, when you just talking about that in general about collaboration, I think back to our office. We hosted a community engagement symposium. It was last year in December the 11th. And it was kind of the trickle effect from a training or workshop that my director and I attended. It was through Southeastern Family Violence Center. And I think the name slips me, but I want to say it was like community initiatives, focusing on rebuilding our community. So we went to the Office for Regional Initiatives. That's where it was hosted. And the presenter, they really talked a lot with a lot of local community leaders, and even some leaders who weren't in our county, just talking about, okay, well, what is it that our county is facing? Like, what does Robinson County need? Like, what are the issues? What are things that we still have yet to fix or to work towards? So it stems some great conversation and hearing perspectives from everyone. But I think the main thought that pops in my mind about the symposium is some of the leaders who were at the table at that original meeting, they attended the symposium that we had, along with some other community leaders. A lot of community partners came out, and even some faculty and staff on campus. But I think the biggest thing for me was at the end, we did like a debriefing. And that was what came up. The statement was, you know, we all are kind of doing the same thing, but why aren't we partnering together on a lot of the same efforts? And that aspect, she was talking about like food pantries. She said there's one, like you'll see one mostly on every street or every corner, but it's like, why are we all in separate entities? Like, why can't we come together? Why can't we think about how we can collaborate, even if it's not this big food pantry of Robeson County, but not only resource sharing, but thinking beyond that, thinking about like what more can we do as a community? Because we know we have individuals who may be food insecure. We know we have individuals who may be facing like substance abuse or who may be homeless. But how can we as an entity, as a community, all come together collaboratively to think about how can we create change in that aspect, in that way?
Yes, I totally agree. I mean, I think we're in the phase now where we're doing a lot of talking about collaborating and developing these partnerships, and there's this idea, but you know, we need to move to the next step, which is actually taking action and doing something. And that's just been, to me, it seems so simple, but it's so challenging. And I think a lot of individual personalities play into that. Ego is an issue. And then I also think a lot of times you hear policy and procedure comes up, well, we can't do that because it's against our policy, or, that could be an insurance liability problem. But I mean, I think we really need to look at the bigger picture and, see that it doesn't matter if it's a policy issue, then we need to change that policy because it's not benefiting our community. It's not for the greater good, which is where we need to be at right now. The individual mindset that exists in the community is not benefiting anybody.
And I couldn't agree more. And even while we're on the topic of collaboration, what would you say a good partnership looks like, or a meaningful partnership, or effective partnership looks like?
Meaningful, good. I would say definitely individuals coming together and, first of all, understanding each other's perspective and um, being willing to compromise, um, being willing to be open and share, and being willing to work together. At the end of the day, yes, we can talk all day long about what we could do and what the resources are, but that doesn't mean anything unless we actually do something. So definitely critical aspects of a partnership are open communication, being willing to share resources, putting aside personal agendas, and really looking at the big picture. It's not about benefiting your organization or winning an award for your organization. It's about helping the community and the individuals that really need the help in the community. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for that. So what would you say? Is there anything that you wish people knew just about your organizations or just the issues that you all are trying to solve?
Wish people would know. I would say, again, I can't get past this idea of collaboration, because to me that's been really my greatest challenge and struggle, because it just seems so simple and logical, and I don't understand why it has to be such a complex, complicated issue that we can't overcome. So, from Stop the Pain's perspective, again, we're a small organization. We don't have, and because we're situated in a church, we don't really have access to funding opportunities like some of your other organizations do. We don't have we're all volunteers, so we don't really have the capacity. And so, but what we do have are the experience. We have the experience, we have the background, and we have the support of community and members of recovery who are actually the ones impacted, the ones we're trying to help. And so just acknowledging what we bring to the table and how working together can make such a huge difference. And I'll give you one example. Several years ago, we did a community event. So at Stop the Pain, we always do community events, and we don't attract a huge crowd. I would say on average, we have between 50 to 100 people, sometimes more at our events. We've had some larger ones, we've had some smaller ones, and it's great. They're always great. We definitely make an impact on those that attend, and we've been able to maintain relationships with these individuals over the years. But I want to say maybe 3 years ago we did a community event where we had several large scale partners, the tribe, the university. I know I'm going to leave out some people. The churches were involved, and we, I think, brought almost nearly 500 people to that event. And just thinking about, and even there's some other agencies that have done different events themselves individually, and they will attract this small number, 100 people. But just thinking how much more impactful that event was when we actually all came together and worked together, and the sense of community and just the sheer number of people that were impacted compared to any effort that we've done by ourselves. So again, I'm just stressing this need for true collaboration. That's what I want people to know. That's what I know that works well, and I know that that's the only thing that's gonna, make an impact in our community when we actually start working together. And I would say that's the same for even PAWSS, even though we're new, that's on our agenda to do, is to, I think the founder of PAWSS really sees the organization as um, a support system. So how can we support work that's already going on in the community? Where can we fill in the gaps? How can we bring people together? Raising awareness about what the problems are. So I would say, yeah, there are two things I would say.
I definitely would say that's needed, that support, because I feel like oftentimes that can get left out of the picture. I think sometimes it becomes more focused on like the organization or the people within it, as far as like the directors or whomever, and then less focus sometimes on the actual individual who is impacted. So I say kudos to you all, because it is a needed service. It is something that's needed, despite if someone may have a story, who are recovering or who've been through certain things to get them involved with you all's organization. But I think that support piece is vital. I think in anything that we all do, even as professionals, I find myself just seeking meaningful ways of support, or learning how to ask, learning how to say like I need help. I think that's the first key. But I think just what you all are doing already, just hearing more about your organization and what you all do, it's just profound, because I think in such a small town of Robinson County, or a small county of Robinson County, it's needed. So with the news and effects of COVID-19, that's just swept and expanded widespread in our nation, have there been any ways that you all may have responded as an organization, or ways that you may have responded personally? And I guess in this question too, if there's any internships or volunteer opportunities, whether virtual or in person, maybe that you all may have offered or are offering.
So I would say for both organizations, it's really just put a halt in everything that we're trying to do, because a lot of, particularly for Stop the Pain, a lot of the stuff we do is community oriented and driven, and requires us to meet in group settings. And so for Stop the Pain, I just actually literally sent out a text message last week about how we need to get together and think about how we're going to move forward, and what we're going to do in the future and what we can do. One of the things that two things that we've done with Stop the Pain is one of our board members leads a support group every Tuesday night at the Holiday Inn, and we can't do that anymore because of what's going on. And so we wanted to think about how we can continue to provide support to these individuals. And so one of the things that we've done is he now will go live on Facebook every Tuesday at the same time and just share a message and offer an opportunity for people to engage with him. And that has been really great. And I know I'm not a member of the recovery community, but you still get something from him. He's very good at what he does. And, regardless of what your experiences are, we've all been through hard times and it's very relatable to anyone. And so just throwing this out there, I would recommend anyone hop on Stop the Pain's page. All the videos are on there if you're going through a hard time, regardless if you're in recovery or not, or you just have some sort of mental health issue, or maybe you're going through something with your family. His message is very relatable to anyone. So that's been one thing that we've done. Another thing that we did is we got face masks and we took it out to all of our volunteers and anyone who supported or members of the recovery community. And I actually got a message from one of our longtime volunteers saying that they were so appreciative of the mask because her and her husband had been sharing the same blue medical mask for the last month, and they were thankful to finally have one that they didn't have to share. And so that was great to hear. And so we're really with Stop the Pain, we're just at a standstill now trying to figure out what we can do to move forward. And with PAWSS, it's the same. We're still in the early phases of developing our program, so we're still able to move forward with some of our development. But as far as one of our goals is to start offering classes weekly on different topics, whether it's related to health, substance use, cultural enrichment, things like dancing and yoga is the vision. But we can't do that now, of course, because we can't meet. But thinking about how we can move forward, a lot of people talk about doing stuff online and virtually, which is great. But in the county that we're in, most people don't have access to internet or computers, so it's a huge challenge. And so how do we overcome that? But as far as volunteers, we have an intern now actually working in the PAWSS office, and she's been great. We can always use more volunteers. I know that one of our efforts to Stop the Pain is we want to transition from underneath the nonprofit status of the church that we're in to be a more independent organization so we can get access to more funding opportunities. And so we had an intern from the social work department at UNCP, and she really drafted a lot of our all of the bylaws and articles of incorporation that we need to set up this agency. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done. I mean, and I would encourage anyone who's interested in volunteering to please do so. But I would say at this point, everything, until we can develop a hard and fast plan, and the future is so uncertain right now. It's just really been challenging. Even in my position at the university and my research study, we're kind of on pause because a lot of it is in the clinics, and it's requiring people to come in and get tested, and no one's going to the clinics. Everything's telemedicine right now. So everything is just sort of still up in the air. So I think we're at the point now where everyone's just trying to figure out what's next. What does the future look like?
Yes, I agree. Just being adaptable and flexible during this time, I think has been most important. I know, as you mentioned, our office, that's one thing that we really had to think about. And as far as virtual opportunities go, just what else can we do as an office to engage with our students, to engage with our faculty and staff, our community? Like, what else can we do? So we've come up with like quite a few initiatives such as this, different workshops, whether it was like community engagement workshops or what have you, or our snacks and social justice series, just thinking about what else can we do just to make sure we're still creating that impact, that change that we want to have and make. So I'm with you on just trying to await like next steps, like what does it look like? And I think we're all in that point of uncertainty, that's point of just the unknown, kind of being fearful in a sense, but also hopeful. So like I said, if there's anything that we can do as an office, just to help or support, please let us know. And I guess that kind of leads into my next question. What would you say, like right now with the current times that we're in, how can someone support you all? What is the greatest support that someone could give just to support your organization? Or how can people get involved?
Well, before I answer that question, I did want to say one more thing about the community and the COVID-19 issue. And point out the churches in the community. I think that for me, they have been so creative at continuing to carry out their services as far as like these drive-through church things. I thought that was absolutely amazing that that was an option, and you leave it to the churches to figure out how to continue to provide their services. So I would think, and to get to the question you asked, I think the biggest thing that could help us right now is figuring out how do we navigate these, what are these creative things that we can do to overcome what's happening now, because I think we're just, at such a standstill. I know the founder of PAWSS was just absolutely frustrated because he's been so excited and looking forward to starting these programs, but it's just like now we can't do anything. So how can we, move forward? What are these creative ideas, like these drive-through church services, which is I thought was amazing. What are the things that we can do? Volunteers, they can always reach out to our organization. We always need help, because that's Stop the Pain. Particularly, we're that's all we are, volunteers. We're a group of just people who care, and we wouldn't be where we are today if it hasn't been for all the people who've helped us along the way. And yeah, so I would say right now, and then just thinking generally, even prior to COVID-19 and the challenges there, funding, how do we secure funding to support these services? We've been pretty fortunate. I know a lot of the events we've had in the past, we didn't have any money, but we were able to, like I said, get different organizations to contribute and then have a successful event. And it's just all about networking and putting pressure on people and calling them over and over again. And a lot of times it's not that they don't want to help, it's just that they're so busy. And I find even like working with tribal communities is the same thing, just not giving up and continually putting pressure on these agencies to get them to be involved and do what you need to do. So, what else? Thinking again, I would say thinking about, again, getting back to these partnerships and collaboration. How can we come together and do something together as a community, and not thinking how can y'all help our organization, but how can we help each other? What can we do to come together to serve our community as, a team?
I think that's most important, especially with our community, especially and the effects of COVID-19 and what that's looked like. I think it would be a great celebration. Like once we get our next steps on what happens from here, just to have something like that, whether it's a community celebration, XYZ, just something just to say, hey, we're past COVID now, like we're flourishing as a community, and then also going back to like different collaborations or partnerships and what that looks like. So this is my last question, and you can feel free at the end if there's anything else you want to chime in on and add. I guess for anyone who might be listening or watching, what are some key steps, if any, that you could give to someone who might be interested in doing or starting a nonprofit or program related to just helping someone or
I would first say, fully understand what you're getting yourself into, because nonprofit work is definitely very challenging, but also very rewarding. And I think that's why nonprofits exist and continue to function today, because of how rewarding it is. But just really understanding what you're getting yourself into, first of all, and knowing that it's not going to be simple or easy. Second, I would say taking advantage of all the free resources that are available today in the community. Particularly RCC has so many classes: how to start a nonprofit, how to do grant writing. There are a lot of great resources on the internet that are free that you can use to educate yourself about how to do that. And then I would also say really, being open to working with other individuals and acknowledging that, regardless of what you want to do, what your passion is, just knowing that, you're not going to change the world. Your nonprofit is not going to change our community, and you're going to have to work with other people in the community. And, you know, by doing that, you're not only going to increase your success as an organization, but you're going to increase the impact of what you're trying to do in the community generally. So, you know, knowing what you're getting into, taking the time to fully educate yourself about the processes, because I know that that's one of the biggest challenges for nonprofits. I learned in the classes a lot of nonprofits fail just simply because they can't sustain themselves, whether it be financially or just having the staff or commitment of volunteers to continue the work. And then, you know, acknowledging that you are going to need to partner and collaborate with individuals, and not think you're going to change the world by yourself or overnight.
Absolutely, just pacing is key, I think. But as I mentioned before, just kudos to you all and thank you just for all that you're doing, both personally and professionally with your nonprofits. I think once I attended the meeting that you all had, it was evident that when I left, I felt like, okay, this is a community organization that's really going to make some change. And as I mentioned, just the services that you all offer, I just think they're profound because oftentimes I think that is a gap that's left out, just a supportive service. And I say that in the sense of maybe being slightly closed-minded, but my hope is to not be as far as like thinking about all of the other organizations out there who may also offer just support services, but based off of I guess, the continued communication between you and I within my role in CCE and thinking about partnerships and what it looks like for our office and UNCP. I thank you, like I said, just for everything that you all do, have done, reaching out for partnership with us. It's been extremely great because I also think just these types of conversations have opened my mind to so many vast opportunities, not only for myself, but also for our students. If they're thinking about, okay, well, I want to volunteer, but I don't know where to go to, but I have an interest in XYZ. So represent, hey, maybe check out UNCP Serve, maybe, look and see if there's any opportunities that are local. And then my hope is, as they're going through the PAWSS or Stop the Pain being one that strikes their eye.
I would say to just to follow up on that, from my experience so far in the community, that's been an issue is just awareness of what's out there. Like, yes, we're a small rural community, but I think people will be surprised at everything that's going on in this community, all the organizations that exist. And I know we have a resource guide. I think I sent that to you with Stop the Pain. And that went from a 2-page document that I would give out to participants in my dissertation to the 100-page document that it is today. And we're still learning about all the resources that are available. And so how can we coordinate and connect those, even with y'all at UNCP and just all I think you said how many hundreds of partners you all have in there. So there's tons of stuff going on. It's amazing. So.
So, Asa, are there any lasting thoughts? Is there anything else that you would like to share with anyone who might be watching or listening?
I would just say, thank you for this opportunity to share and thinking of us. And I would just say, anyone, don't give up, continue the fight. It's not going to be easy, but, at the end of the day, it's very rewarding and a fulfilling experience, especially when you get to see, someone who's been struggling actually make a big change in their life, with regards to the recovery community, whatever, social issue you're working with. It's extremely rewarding. And if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have been able to continue to do the things that I've done over the last few years. So thank you again. This has been great.
Thank you so much, Asa. And I agree, it's been great. For this to be, the first conversation or the first interview that I've had with a partner, I really have enjoyed just conversating with you, getting to know more about your organization, the services you all provide, and then just hearing your stance on nonprofit work. Because I feel like maybe a lot of students or even professionals, can't hit myself, just thinking about, okay, well, where does my role look like personally in nonprofit work? What can I do as people start to think about creating their own programs that they can provide. So I hope that the conversation that you and I have had today just can serve as just something to inspire someone else or to motivate them, and even just to gain that awareness piece that I think we both talked about during the conversation.
Yes, I hope so too.
So Asa, I say thank you so much again, just for talking with me today. If anyone listening or watching, we hope that you gained something from this. This is not the last of our community partner spotlights. You can check out what's happening next on our UNCP Community Civic Engagement page. And there will be other opportunities, virtual things that we're doing as an office. And then, of course, email or contact Ms. Asa Rebels about opportunities as far as volunteerism, or even just to call and get some educational awareness about what they're doing within their organization. So Asa, I say thank you again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.